Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Medeek Wall plugin. My name is Nathaniel P. Wilkerson, and today I want to discuss the new feature for staggered stud walls. But before I actually dive into that, I just wanted to point out a few other little minor features or fixes that I've been making in the past few weeks, actually past few days, really. The first thing I wanted to point out was I basically had issues, with Z-fighting with placing these door and window symbols on top of walls. And you'll notice here now that this here is offset off the top of that stud wall by about, actually by a quarter inch. And what I've done is I've basically given you a few more options here in the annotation formatting section of the plugin. So you can offset your verticals, or what I call vertical offset, I guess, for symbols and also for text. So the first one here is basically for, and I kind of have little hints here to tell you what they are, but basically symbols that sit on the floor or on the at the ground level, like this door symbol here. You notice how it kind of Z-fights with that foundation, that slab there. So you have that ability where you can adjust that. And these are global settings, so they're not per wall or anything, but you can set them globally, as well as this vertical offset 2 is what is pulling this up above the top plate. And then you also have the text vertical offset. So let's say you have a situation where you've got walls and then you've got some carpet or something on this, and you want those higher and raised up above a little bit, so you can do that to get those off of the what I call the zero ground level. Anyways, just one little thing there I think that could be helpful for some of you guys as far as formatting and such. Also, I think in the materials section, I don't think I really wanted to point anything out here too much other than we now, of course, I probably have mentioned this before, but I'm sorry, this Windows 2017 or SketchUp 2017 has that little issue with the menu's not popping up in the right place. This option here for steel gives you kind of like a steel texture applied to your studs. And again, that's not per wall basis, that's on the basically globally. So I think what I'm going to end up doing is moving that to a per wall basis instead of a global setting. So we'll work on that. But anyways, let's jump here into the staggered wall. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and created this model just to give us something to work with real quick. It's just 4 walls sitting on a slab. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the sheathing and cladding and gypsum for now. And let's just turn those off so we can see what we got going on here with the skeleton of the structure. So typical stud frame wall, 2x6 walls. I'm going to now put a partition wall down the center of this thing. And you'll notice that I created this line just kind of as a guide. I mean, I already have the grid, but I just wanted to be able to visually see that a lot easier. So I'm just going to go ahead and click the wall tool. I'm going to do an interior wall. I'm just going to leave it at 2x6. Hit update on that. I'm going to select my first point. And you'll notice, of course, it justifies on the front framing of the wall. And you'll also notice right there, you'll see where it has a little text where it says front. So that tells your justification. So what you can do is once you've clicked your first point and you're about ready to click your second point, this is where you can use the Alt key. And let's just try that. So I'm going to click Alt. And now you notice that it is centering on the wall. And if I click it again, it's on the back side of the wall. And if I click it again, now it's actually justifying to the sheathing of the wall. So like if this is a 7/16 plywood, which it is, then it's basically pushing that wall back 7/16. But in this particular case, and if you click it again, it goes back to the original. So basically it cycles through 4 different settings. So I'm going to click that one more time, get me to center, and then bring it right up here to this framing. And go ahead and create my wall. Okay, so now I've got this central partition wall framed in here. And that's all fine and dandy. But let's say, for instance, now I want to do some sort of staggered stud configuration, and I want to have, insulation, better insulation, soundproofing, whatever you want to call it. So to do that, now all you have to do is hit Edit Wall Assembly. And what I've done, at least for now, is I've turned the stud ply option. I've basically given it one additional setting, which is 0. So, typically it's one ply. You can do a 2-ply stud wall and you'll get doubled up studs or tripled up. A lot of apartment complexes do that sort of thing. But in this case, if we select 0 for that, and then we hit update, you're going to notice that you end up with a alternating staggered stud formation here. And the other thing you'll notice right away is for that 2x6 wall, it automatically downsized those staggered studs to the next size, which in this case would be a 2x4. And for now, that's what I have it configured as. So basically, it will jump the staggered studs down to the next common size of lumber. So for instance, let's change up this wall. Let's go to say like a stud depth here of like a 2x8 wall, right? So that'd be 7.25. And I hit update. And now if you actually measure that stud, you'll notice it's not quite 2 inches, and that's because the difference between a 2x6 and a 2x8 is not 2 inches. It's 1.75 inches because that's a 5.5 inch stud. So yeah, so it's basically gone to a 2x6 stud with a 2x8 wall. Anyways, so that is what is the new staggered stud feature I added, and like I said, you just have to change it to a 0-ply stud wall. Let's go ahead and just to show you here, I'm going to turn on the cavity insulation. Let's just do pink fiberglass for that. That'll work. Okay, so you can see the way it's doing it is it's actually leaving or cutting the insulation into these bats and leaving that little piece out that's not behind the stud. I could make it so that it leaves this whole piece, or I guess it wouldn't really be one piece, or I guess it would be. Yeah, I mean, if it didn't cut these little pieces out, then this whole piece of insulation would be one big chunk that's kind of weaving in and out between the studs. But I left it like this because it's a little bit more manageable and it works a little bit easier with my existing algorithms for the insulation. So that's kind of the way it is at the moment. Notice as well, too, and I wanted to point this out for some people, that when we bump that to a 2x8 wall, of course, this wall knows nothing about that. And so the thing to do is when you have some situation like this, you just simply need to regen the other wall. So now notice that it corrected itself and it accommodated that 2x8 wall within the in the intersection here. So let's go ahead and regen that wall, and there we have it. Okay, so there's our staggered stud 2x8 wall. Now, I was going to say too. So if you some guys are doing these northern Canada, I guess, and a few other places up, I think in Minnesota, where they actually do that on the exterior walls as well. And so we can do that as well. This is an interior wall, and if we turn on that gypsum, we'll see there's the gypsum. But let's go ahead and bump all these to a staggered stud wall as well, just to demonstrate that. So what I'll do with that is I'll use the wall copy tool. I'll just come over here, hit wall copy, change only the stud ply. I'm leaving everything else the same. I'm just going to take this parameter. I like to hit update and then just click the walls that I want to change. So you notice they all went to staggered studs. Okay, and now let's take a look at this front wall. This is where it gets a little bit more interesting. So let's just close that out. And now the blocking gets a little interesting with staggered studs, but I guess it is what it is. So yeah, you can see that the common studs that get generated, as well as the cripples, all are staggered. Of course, the trimmers and king studs for the openings, they remain the same. They are still full studs, but and of course this intersection, the blockers for that as well, are going to remain full 2x6 studs. But everything else, all the other common studs that normally are on 16-inch on center all get converted to a staggered stud. So they're all 2x4s in this case. Anyways, yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess, for staggered studs. With firewall type construction, the only other thing I wanted to point out really was that, like with this particular wall, there are situations, let's go ahead and edit it one more time. You might want to do like a double gypsum wall on both sides. And so you have that option as well. So if we turn on our gypsum real quick, I just want to show that. All the other walls are single gypsum, but now we've got double gypsum plus staggered studs plus 2x8 thickness. So you've got quite a bit of flexibility as far as doing something like this, where you need these kind of heavy partition walls between living units or however you're doing that. The other thing I just wanted to point out as well is that when we shifted this wall to a 2x8, and remember, we started by centering it on a 2x6 center. But when we bumped it up to a 2x8, notice that the wall did stay centered. And the reason for that is because the the end point of this wall is always going to be on the outside of framing, right? And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. I'm just going to go here into the global settings. I'm going to turn on the start and end markers. And just save settings there real quick. I usually leave that off, but because I don't need them typically. They're there really just kind of as what I call training wheels. But sometimes they do kind of provide useful information. So let's go ahead and we're going to regen this wall real quick. Okay, so notice that this is the start marker, or end marker, sorry, and right here this green one is the start marker for that wall. And notice that it is, and I'm going to hide this foundation real quick so we can see that from below. So that outside framing point, whether it's justified initially at the center of the wall or wherever, that is always going to be kind of the reference line that the wall is using as its reference line. So if we change the wall from 2x4 to 2x6 to 2x8, it's going to keep this location the same, right? So in situation like this, where now we need to recenter that back up, well, then we would just need to figure out what that difference distance is and just simply move the wall, right? So let's go ahead and just draw a line here, and I'll show you what we can do. So the midpoint of that line is there. And if we look, it's 7/8 of an inch, right, from the center of that line, or for that center line, sorry. So all I would do is I would just simply use the native tools. Don't have to use any special Medeek move tool or anything, because I'm not stretching any walls that are connected to this. I'm just basically moving this wall, and it will just regen the other one. So what we'll do is we'll just bump it over 0.875, which is 7/8 of an inch. And now it's centered, as you can see. And I'm going to come up here and I'll look at this wall and say, oh, we got a problem here. No big deal. Just hit regen. And same thing over here. And there we go. The wall is healed. And we're good to go. And again, like I said, just remember what I mean by the outside of framing. That is all that always is the reference point for these walls. Okay, so same issue here. If you take and delete this wall, I just wanted to point this out. Notice you're left with this interesting ladder blocking thing going on here, and you just simply regen the walls, and it just heals itself. So it goes away. All right, I think that pretty much does it as far as new features. Just wanted to really talk about that stagger stud thing, and I think it should be proved to be useful. The only other thing I can think is that I may at some point decide to change it up so that rather than just stepping down from the next to the next lumber size, that you can actually have a little more granular control, and you can actually specify what those staggered studs are. Like, let's say you have a 2x8 wall, but you still want 2x4 staggered studs in that 2x8 wall, which will give you a lot more cavity room behind the stud. So that is something for future work. So just depending on what feedback I get on this, I may make that adjustment. So anyways, appreciate you guys' feedback. And as always, I appreciate you guys supporting my efforts. And we will talk to you later. Thank you.